How's everybody doing? Welcome to another edition of Dissecting Diddy, the weekly podcast that we do here at Fix Plus. I'm your host, Jay Dow, my co-host, Nicole Johnson, and this week we are joined by the esteemed criminal defense attorney, David Schwartz. David, thanks for being here.
Good to see you, Jay. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, David.
So we've had a big week in court. I mean, everything you asked and it probably happened. We ended the week with Kid Cudi testifying. I mean, he walked in the court honestly looking stressed, right? I mean, he had on jeans, a t-shirt, jacket, he's smoking a cigarette. And then he describes on the witness stand how, in his opinion, Sean Diddy Combs was responsible for the torching of his 911, my favorite vehicle, by the way. Like 14 years ago. Was this back in 2011?
Yes.
And, everyone has been saying in court whether or not they think the jury is making or drawing a correlation between all of the instances that the prosecution is bringing up in court of past crimes, whether it be domestic abuse, hiring male escorts, and now the arson, the alleged arson that Diddy allegedly committed. So, David, I want you to explain for us, if you can, what predicate crimes mean and how they tie into a RICO case that the prosecution is trying to make, racketeering conspiracy.
Yeah, it's a very interesting case. The racketeering conspiracy. Look, you need this criminal enterprise that's in the business of committing all these types of crimes. And so when we talk, and there are some predicate crimes that need to be committed, whether it's rape, sex trafficking, the arson, all kidnapping. These are all potential predicate crimes. And you need predicate crimes in order to show that this was a business of committing illegal activities, an enterprise. You know, they enacted these statutes to fight the mafia, right? Back in the day, back in the 70s, in the 80s. That's why we have these statutes in the first place, where there was real organized crime. The question becomes, is this a mafia? Is this an organization that's been put together in order to commit criminal acts? So the arson, for example, 14 years ago, they bring up this arson. There's no evidence that P. Diddy even committed this arson. It's just all speculation, and
it's an accusation at this point.
So yeah, it's all allegations. Also, they brought up a break-in at Kid Cudi's home. No evidence. Sean Combs was not arrested back then for the break-in, for the arson. There's no evidence that he committed these things, but there was a piece of testimony that said when Kid Cudi presented this to him, met him at the Soho house, they said Diddy was standing there like a supervillain, and he described that stance that he had. And I don't understand why that was important to even mention in court. Why did the prosecution ask Kid Cudi to describe their meetings, if you will?
Yeah, they're trying to, put all these facts. This is your life, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy. These are all the horrible acts that you've committed. I think everyone could agree that he's committed some horrible acts, and the domestic violence is just awful. Just awful. But
his defense team isn't shying away from that. I think they opened up with their opening statement saying, "Listen, you're going to think he's a jerk. You're going to think he's mean. We don't shy away from the domestic violence history." They embraced that, saying, because I think they understood once all of the witness testimony from Cassie came out, there wasn't going to be a way to sidestep that.
Yeah, but he's not on trial for domestic violence or assault.
And that was a good move to embrace that. The question becomes, does this rise to the level of this organized crime activity, this racketeering conspiracy? So when we look at some of those facts, first of all, there's no linkage to Sean Combs. There's no real linkage to it, whether it's the arson or some of the other facts that they're bringing out. Certainly the domestic violence, the rape allegations, there's the connection. But where's the conspiracy? you need a conspiracy. You need this entire, and look, they may be building that case, and they may be building it slowly, and they may be showing all these individual acts to show how it connects with the overall conspiracy once they start bringing in that type of evidence. But so far as we sit here today, I haven't, I haven't seen it. I haven't heard it. I'm not following the case 24/7. I got my own stuff going on here. But bottom line is, they have to prove their case, right? And they have to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And these are some very tough statutes that they need to put together. I hate the fact that these statutes that were enacted to go after real mafia action, to go after real organized crime, criminal gangs, all types of organized criminal activity, that it's being used here in this particular case when I don't see this organization yet coming together.
Well, it can correct us if we're wrong, I guess, from even when the charges were first dropped back in September. They're saying that, and the government's saying that Sean Combs had the means, the money, the influence, this team around him, from assistants, managers, drivers, his travel person that booked his flights and so forth. And they were all working together in concert to orchestrate and to have sex trafficking for criminal activity. And that's, we all questioned it when we first saw the charges. We couldn't really understand how you can have racketeering or RICO without charging other people. He's the only one charged here, but I guess you don't have to charge a group. You only need one to bring down a charge of conspiracy, correct?
Right. You could have uncharged co-conspirators. So the drivers, the people working for his organization can all be co-conspirators without being charged. So yes, he could be the only one charged in this crime of racketeering conspiracy. But the bottom line is, the statute was never meant for this. This is a bad guy. He's running around. He's doing all these bad things. He's got money. He's using other people to his advantage. But we have to see how this all comes about. The kidnapping predicate. We have to see that coming about. How he brought, he used women for the use of prostitution and drugged them.
Well, male strippers. That's what we've heard so far.
Yeah, exactly.
That he hired for the purpose of engaging in the freak-offs with Cassie Ventura.
Right.
And why is it that we have to drive home that message of the baby oil in the hotel, the drugs in the bag, money in a duffel bag, all of these things? And Jay, you've been in court every day, seeing the evidence, the pictures of the, they even said there was pills in the shape of former President Barack Obama. Why is all of that important to present in this case?
David?
Oh, I thought she was asking you, Jay. But yeah, you want to present everything, right? So you want to show, at least from the government standpoint, that all of these acts, and they're going to be presenting hundreds of situations like this, the freak out, the oil, whatever they want to show, it's weird stuff, but the bottom line is they're going to want the jury to have some flavor here. They're going to want the jury to have a flavor of the extent of this person's criminal organization. But right now, up to this point, everything that they've presented, I don't see this coming together. But there's a lot of trial left. Okay,
we're in week 2 we're about to start week 3 of an 8-week trial.
Right. So it's only week 3 of an 8-week trial. I'm sure they're going to get into some of the broader issues, the links, what people knew, when they knew it, how this whole thing ties together. They'll probably be introducing a chart of this criminal association that Sean Combs put together, and we'll see where that plays out. You know, proving you don't have to prove the underlying predicates either, right? So
that's an important distinction, David. So please explain why.
yeah, so the all these underlying predicates, as long as the jury believed that there was a conspiracy to commit these underlying predicates, right? So as long as they conspired, for the kidnapping and the sex trafficking and the prostitution and the arson and the robbery and all these other criminal predicates, as long as the jury believes beyond a reasonable doubt that this group of people, they were put together in order to commit these underlying predicates, and that they were this criminal organization. And we always, the prototype is the mafia, right? And being in business to commit all these types of crimes, drug crimes, right? So as long as they were put together for that, and the jury believes that beyond a reasonable doubt, and that there were more than two actors participating, and there were more than two co-conspirators, then they can make out the crime of racketeering conspiracy.
So, David, is it fair to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the jury needs to believe that A, his employees evolved into people who felt they were coerced into remaining in Diddy's employ, and then B, they need to be convinced that Cassie Ventura was an unwilling participant who was sex trafficked in order to buy into the larger RICO charge?
Well, the co-conspirators didn't have to be coerced, as long as they were participating. They're not the victims.
So is their employment enough?
No, I don't think their employment is enough. There needs to be this agreement. There needs to be this understanding. So if you're just a driver, driving Sean Combs around, maybe there's some crazy stuff happening in the car, but you're just the driver. Are you really a co-conspirator?
So how does a driver go from being a driver to a co-conspirator in this case?
If they become part of it, if he starts relying, we're going to need to see text message. I'm sure there'll be phone calls, text messages. We're going to need to see, or a lot of these people are now cooperating, right? So we need to see if how they testify and how they explain the fact that they were part of this criminal organization. I'm sure the government is going to prep these witnesses to testify a certain way with a certain flavor. And as long as the jury believes that they are part of this overall conspiracy, that they were doing something more than just doing their jobs, that they knew that there were prostitutes in the car, they knew they were being trafficked from other places, they knew they were being drugged. If they all knew about it and they all did at least one act, right? You only have to be 1% co-conspirator. As long as they did one act in furtherance of that conspiracy, that's enough.
Well, so we had two assistants who took the stand this week. One of them only took the stand after receiving immunity from the judge. And those assistants described, basically just doing what needed to be done based on Diddy's requests.
Right.
But not admitting anything criminal.
I didn't hear either of them say that they were aware of or asked to commit crimes.
Right. So, look, the jury's going to have to, but they're going to see their participation. They're going to have to connect all these dots. In summation, the government is going to have a lot of material to try to connect together. So even though they're not admitting it, it doesn't mean that they're still not part of this overall conspiracy. So look, I think it's a stretch. I don't think the statute was meant to cover activities like this.
Is it safe to say, though, that the RICO framework in and of itself was created to lower the legal threshold to make it easier for the federal government to go after the mob and get those convictions that they were trying to get unsuccessfully for decades?
It was, because when you're proving this RICO, this racketeering conspiracy, the theory becomes, well, did you create this organization to commit all these crimes? Not proving the underlying, not sitting there and proving a murder case or proving a robbery case or proving a drug case or sex trafficking. So was this all put together pursuant to the enterprise itself? And it does. It really lowers. And now by lowering it, right? Because otherwise they couldn't, so if a mob boss puts in a hit for someone, right? But they don't do it themselves. They have somebody in the mafia to do it. How do you connect the dots? And then if you're doing all kinds of secret signals, and so how are you going to get the mob bosses? So that's why they enacted this RICO statute. But now in recent days, we're seeing this expanded big time. Look, it's being used for violent criminal gangs, MS-13 and all these. That's a good thing, right? But when you start, let's go to the 2020 election, the Atlanta case, right? And so they're part of Trump.
David's taking us into politics now. You taking us into politics?
I'm not. I don't want to take it to politics because, believe me, I don't care about the politics. But that's a good example of, was that really a criminal enterprise? All these people getting together to try to advocate for certain result in the election? I don't think so, and I don't think that's what it was meant for. But getting back to this case, certainly I don't think that's what the statute was meant to cover, is this type of activity. Look,
you're speaking as a defense attorney. Now I want you to put your objectivity hat on, and I want you to tell me, if you can, what you believe the prosecution has done right, because we've heard a lot from you.
And Dave, you were a former prosecutor.
I'm a former prosecutor.
Yeah.
So put your prosecutor hat on for us. Look, I want to hear both sides.
I'll give you both sides. This person created an organization that may have been created for legal purposes, but certainly crossed the line and ventured into the side of an organization existing to commit crimes and existing for an illegal purpose. So if you have an organization where you have drivers, you have people that work for you, you have a staff, you have people that do all kinds of things for you. If you have your staff, calling prostitutes for you, bringing prostitutes to a hotel room, drugging them, and then one person gets the drugs, the other person gets the prostitutes, someone else commits an arson, puts a car on fire. Just because maybe we don't have proof that Sean Combs was the one who actually did all these things, it doesn't matter, because now you've created this enterprise to commit all these illegal acts, and that's why you are criminally culpable under racketeering conspiracy. So, and the government is going to put together all these facts that we don't think means a lot right now. Like Nicole mentioned the baby oil or whatever, right? All this doesn't mean anything. When you put it together, and you show this criminal conspiracy, and he put up together this web of people, then he should be found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of racketeering conspiracy. So that's the government's argument.
David, go ahead, Nick.
On the from the government standpoint, and David, from the prosecutor's standpoint, and what we've seen so far, they're talking about a lot of things. Again, let's backtrack. We've seen the recording, the tape in the hallway with the assault on Cassie Ventura. That's big evidence. We're hearing from former bandmates saying that it was an abusive situation, that they were forced to do things that they didn't want to do, or the forced labor, if you will. We've heard from bodyguard assistants, a host of people just describing how bad it was, or the conditions were bad working for Sean Combs. But why, again, I have to ask, why is that important? Why is that important? It's bad to work everywhere, you know. Let me know if it's good to go into where you work, you know. So
Well,
why is
Nick, I'm
all
sure
of
there's
that?
some
I
people
could
who
assure
love
you
this.
my office is not what you just explained. I could assure you of that. And lots of
So
people.
we shouldn't come work for you,
enjoy
David.
But if bosses are tough on staff or employees, there's nothing criminal there. You know, if he
Right.
told them to run a mile and come back, there's nothing. But these things are things that we heard in court. You know, they painted a picture that it was difficult to work for him. He had you working 1,000,000 hours. You didn't get any sleep. Things like that. Was that a waste of time, or will that mean something in this case?
Well, the prosecution is trying to make it mean something in this case. Certainly, the work environment is going to be part of the flavor of the case. It's gonna show the background and the environment where all this criminal behavior could have taken place. But I agree. There's a lot of bad places to work, and there's a lot of people in control that are abusive to their employees, and those cases many times get taken care of in the civil context, right? In the civil arena. To equate all, go ahead.
No, go ahead, David.
Then I'm just going to say, to equate all of these individual facts of being a bad boss, of committing horrific domestic violence, of being an abusive boyfriend, of just immoral, horrific acts, does that really rise to the level of this conspiracy? And that's what I keep harping on right now, because at this point, I don't think it does, even though it's only week 3 of an 8-week trial.
I keep coming back to the sex trafficking and the racketeering conspiracy charges, because those are the 2 charges that carry a potential for a maximum life sentence. So my question for you, David, is a conviction on RICO for Combs, does it require that he was simply aware of some of the predicate crimes, or does he also have to be aware and proven to be actively participating in those predicate crimes?
No, I mean, in order for him to be guilty of the racketeering conspiracy, being aware that someone else is committing a crime is not enough. He would have had to order that crime. He would have had to give the order, and that's how you take down the boss. And he's the boss in this situation, that he's giving the orders. This disparate. If you're running an organization, you think about some of the boiler rooms, right? The boiler room operations. Manipulation of the stock market. Or
Great movie, by the way.
Right. And you think about that. And it's the same type of RICO. It's the same type of conspiracy. It's the same type of racketeering. But there had to have been more than just mere awareness on the part of the boss. He had to have put this whole organization together, this whole criminal organization together, and to give those orders, whether it be drugs, prostitution, kidnappings. He didn't go out and do the kidnapping himself. So when we see some of that evidence,
let's piece this out then. Correct that the jury can rely on witness testimony, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so if we have the jury believing a witness who says that Combs ordered me to do this with no supporting evidence beyond that witness statement, if the jury believes that witness is credible enough, that is enough for that conviction?
For that element of the crime. So that would satisfy
for that predicate.
The conspiracy element. So to show 2 or more people involved with criminal activity, that would be enough for just that one element, not for the entire case.
I'm glad that you're breaking this all down, because I'm hearing a lot of chatter amongst the general public who's in the courtroom with me, right? Because this case is so popular. It's not just reporters who are online with me every day.
Sure.
There are regular people who are, taking off from work to come sit in court, and I hear the comments. Obviously I didn't go to law school, but I've been around enough lawyers like you over the last 27 years to know a little something. And I hear people making statements like, "Oh, this is enough. This is enough." So I'm glad that you're breaking this down.
And it's important. It's important to break it down, because my concern is, will the jury really understand the law and make the determination where we have, again, certain things without a reasonable doubt.
Right.
Other things you have doubt because we're seeing it in court. The testimony very strong. The defense was able to do their job at poking holes on certain things. But will the jury be able to really understand the law?
Well, the U.S. Attorney's Office has a terrific track record. All right, whether you agree or disagree, they're
95 or 96%.
Yes,
95%
conviction rate,
and that's why we have so few trials in federal court. Now, 99.9% of the cases, criminal cases, settle up way before a trial in federal court, and there's a reason for that, because you're going to get really dinged if you blow trial in federal court. Federal court, I find, the state court is a much fairer fight than in federal court. So there are a lot of
reasons, right? It's not just one reason. Correct me if I'm wrong. There are things like superseding indictments.
Oh, we've seen about 3 of those.
Right.
Well, you have superseding indictments.
Can you explain that, David?
Too. Yeah. Look, the prosecution could always, right, and that's the superseding indictment is a way to entice a criminal defendant to take a plea on what's there already, unless you want to face, more charges. So, and the loot, it's so loose, and you're seeing it with this racketeering conspiracy. The law is so loose and innocuous that you're involved in this. They could claim, as long as there's 2 or more people acting in a situation, they could claim RICO for just about anything. And their track record, and I think it's a track record of confusing these jurors too. Usually the defense wants to confuse the jury, right? The defense wants to make it, so confusing that there's got to be reasonable doubt. I find on these RICO cases or racketeering conspiracy that it's so confusing, and they throw so many of these facts out that somehow they get convictions on these cases.
It's the defense team that is pursuing clarity.
Yeah, because the defense team is trying to explain, look, this makes no logical sense. Well, how is this a criminal enterprise?
Yeah.
There's a driver, there's a couple of people running around, that, there's Sean Combs, our client, who is a horrible, horrible human being, but that doesn't mean he's guilty of racketeering conspiracy.
Yeah,
that doesn't mean that.
That's why you summed up a big part of the opening statement from the defense.
That's why I asked: will the jury understand the law here and have that clarity?
Right.
And think of Sean Combs, the person. He is this multi-millionaire, billionaire. Of course, he didn't drive himself. Of course, he didn't cook for himself. That was his lifestyle. Is a lifestyle that we don't know anything about. Because he's on this level, but. Were these people hired to commit crime or hired to work, within the realm of criminal activity? No, because he had these folks working with him, because that's just what you do, I guess, when you're a billionaire. You have a driver, you have a cleaning woman, you have staff. You have staff. Exactly.
I think you bring up a great point. So now everyone on the staff is a co-conspirator?
And that's the question.
So now the chef, you brought up the chef. Well, the chef is cooking food, but hey, if the chef not poisoned, but drugged some of the dishes, maybe that then now the chef is involved in a conspiracy, right? But chances are there's no allegation of that, I don't believe. And same thing with the people who cleaned. Maybe they saw some things that were not right in their minds, But are they co-conspirators? I don't think so.
David
I don't
Schwartz,
think
we're going
so
to
at
have to
all.
leave it there. Nicole Johnson, and I'm your co-host Jay Dow. Thank you so much for both of you taking the time. And Nick, I'm just doing this whenever you can do it. I'm following your schedule.
We can do this, and you see, we can talk all day.
That's
So
right. That's right.
till next
David,
time.
great to
Thank
see
you.
you. Great to
Thank
see
you both.
Thank you,
Everyone,
David.
thanks for watching for Dissecting Diddy. We're going to be back next week to wrap up the events in court. We're expecting a lot more witnesses, a lot more case. As David said, this is about to be week 3 of what is expected to be an 8-week trial. So we'll see you soon.